Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Right. So, how's your week been?
It's been good.
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice change in pace because school's slowing down a little bit until exam season. So I've had a lot of free time to be,
Right.
working on some other projects.
Nice. Hey Peter. Hey Matt. Hey Mick.
Hey
How's it
guys,
going?
Folks.
all good.
So, let's get started. So, actually, I was talking with Peter last week about some possible topics, and we were talking about how we do post game video review. But actually, before we get there, it's probably helpful for us to talk about pre scouts. So, I think a lot of people hate about pre scouts because it's kind of like the term doesn't really make sense because of course you scout the team before you play them, but uh, until somebody comes up with something better, then we'll just stick with that because scouting, for me it means more like if you're watching a player and trying to figure out whether he's going to be good like 2 or 3 or 5 years down the road, whereas pre-scout we know that it's for tomorrow or it's for this week. So and it's more at the team level. So I'm happy sticking with pre-scout for the time being. If you guys have any better suggestions, then please go ahead. Hey Leo, how's it going? So uh,
Hey
so,
Jack.
Le-
Uh,
Leo's joining us for the first time live. Really excited. Do you want to tell the guys a little bit about yourself?
okay. Hi everyone. I'm super pumped to be here. I just watched the other workshop before, and I'm finally here. I'm currently coaching in Switzerland. I'm video coach and assistant coach in Lausanne. We just played tonight, and we just lost. So I was thinking maybe the best way to move on is to join Jack and you guys and learn more about the game. And I'm super grateful that this is happening.
Yeah.
What level do you coach?
First league professional in NLA.
Which team?
Lausanne. I'm
Lausanne. Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. It's a pretty
So
cool place to
so we got
work
some
at.
heavy hitters today, which is
No
really
pressure.
really great.
Yeah, pre-scout is maybe
Heavy
something I
hitters.
need to work with.
So yeah, pre-scouting, I've kind of been fortunate to, have experienced putting together pre-scout at different levels, whether it's minor hockey, so, where we didn't have pre-scouts, up to university level with Peter, and obviously NHL and AHL. So the way that I'll explain this to you is this, okay, is that, doing a pre-scout, it's not just about breaking down video, but I think it's also important to engage both sides of your brain. Um, I don't know if the scientific literature has actually progressed, and I don't know if left brains and right brain is still a thing, but that's kind of how I think about it. So the left brain aspect of it we'll look at now. So, I think everyone who's played organized hockey here has experienced level 0, which is no pre-scout. Like if you played minor hockey, if you played like low-level high school hockey, you played beer league hockey, this is probably where you're at, unless, you have some teammates or some coaches who are like way too serious for the level that you're at. Um, uh, so, uh, so I'll give you guys a story. I didn't play a super high level of hockey growing up. I played high school hockey in Montreal, which is like, in between house league and travel hockey essentially. And we did minimal video study, like our games weren't filmed. We didn't have anything available online. So basically the way that we would scout opposing teams is just going by reputation. So I don't know if you guys remember Angelo Esposito. So Angelo Esposito was a former first round pick of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And actually, I played in the same league as him, and I played like our school played against his school. So basically, our pre-scout on Selwyn House, when we played Selwyn House, was we tried not to let Esposito touch the puck, and then Esposito scores 5. Like that was pretty much how it goes. But um, so yeah, it's basically word of mouth. Maybe you can look up a guy on Hockey DB or Elite Prospect. Like, if I'm playing beer league now, like once in a while, we're going to play against a guy who actually has a DB or an elite prospect page, so we know that we're in trouble as soon as we see that. And then the way that I like to do it was like the 10 minutes during warm up. I'm not even watching what my team is doing. Like even if I'm playing beer league today, I'll shoot a couple pucks, I'll skate around, but most of the time I'll be watching the other teams, like, who their best forwards are, like, can their D's skate backwards, like how good is their goalie. So, those 10 minutes can tell you a few things. You can probably see like, which player on their team maybe played in the queue when he was younger. But really, like, it doesn't give you any kind of detail whatsoever. But you got to start somewhere. So then, the level one is basically, like, I call it goal level pre-scout because, Mick, like in terms of analytics, we know that, goals is why we play hockey, but it's also, it doesn't have a lot of information and you don't have a ton of data points to figure out who's good and who's bad, but it's something, right? Like, we hate on plus minus, but if a guy's plus 50 and then the guy's minus 40, well, the guy who's plus 50 is probably going to be a better player, especially as we go down the totem pole in terms of what level of play we're at. So, if you're like a Bantam AAA team, you're a midget AAA team, maybe you're an ECHL team, this is probably the level that you're going to be working at, just because you don't maybe have access to a lot of video. Maybe you don't have a video coach. You don't have somebody with like enough hours in a day to do all this stuff. So then maybe you go on YouTube, you watch some highlights of, whoever's on the other team. Maybe Leo, even at your level, there's some teams that, scout using YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Or for Peter's level, like and Canadians University for Women's, we do have a service that allows us to share full games with other teams in our league. In fact, we get fined if we don't upload our games. But then a lot of teams, those that don't have like a dedicated video coach, they're only going to look at goals against, goals for, PKs and power plays. And when I did pre-scouts for Peter, oftentimes during the regular season, that's what he would ask me to do, is just to pull the goals for, goals against, power play and PKs. Let's say we're playing against Ottawa, right? And he'll have me get 2 games of Ottawa, do only the goals and the special teams, and I'll be done within an hour or 2 maximum. And that's because we have a limited number of hours in a day, but also because there's only 5 teams in our conference, so we don't need to, like, there's not going to be that many players, that many teams, that many systems to learn. And obviously, for professional teams, that's not good enough. But for a minor hockey team or a college hockey team, oftentimes that's what you have. And they're actually quite good at identifying the overall team strength and their style of play. Like, you can see what kind of power play they run, what kind of PKs they run. Are they more of a rush team, or do they forecheck and try to create chances that way? How good is their D zone coverage? Is it a fire drill in their zone? So you don't have a lot of quantitative information that's really in depth, but you do kind of get an overall sense of where we're at. Uh, the level 2, I think that's really where Peter and I worked with for the most part at McGill. And this is, we're talking about like a more serious hockey program with, either a part-time or full-time video coach. And now, we've gone from tagging like 5 or 10 clips a game up to 50 to, or 20 to 50 or even more. So we're tagging, all the goals, all the special teams, but also we're tagging scoring chances. We're tagging, D zone coverage, D zone breakout, neutral zone regroup, neutral zone forecheck, ozone forecheck, and ozone play or ozone sequences. So really, this is kind of like the level where I think the vast majority of career coaches, they work at this level, which is really, really useful to identifying a team's patterns of play and their tendencies. And you guys have probably seen the systems sheets that I put up on my newsletter. And basically, you're able to create some really detailed and specific system sheets when you're working at the second level. And for me, like when I first got to McGill, started working with Peter around 2014, this is what he was able to teach me our first year or so. And I think, this is a really good level to work at, basically all the way up to pro, except most of your competitors are also going to be at that level. So if you want a competitive advantage, then you can move up to level 3, which is, I think, what I was able to implement with Peter at McGill, but also what Mick is continuing to push the envelope with today, which is you're combining the video coach aspect and the systems aspect with the analytics aspect as well. So one of the first things that I was able to kind of negotiate with Peter is, I thought it wasn't overly informative for us to look at the game through the lens of, D-zone breakout, D-zone coverage, zone entry, or what I thought was more detailed and more specific was every exit attempt, we break it down into controlled, uncontrolled, and failed plays. So instead of having, let's say, 50 breakout clips in the same game, now you have, let's say, 20 control plays, 15 uncontrolled plays, and the rest were, turnovers or failed exits. And what that does is, first of all, it forces you to tag a lot more events. So we're, at McGill, I think we were up to around 500, maybe even more now. But also what it allows us to do is not only to understand what's happening on a tactical level, but we're also able to identify success rates. So we know for us that we cared about having a certain level of success rates on exits or on entries, or we even cared about, let's say, the other team. We don't want them to have more than a certain success rate on their exits, because that means that something's off with our forechecks, right? And what this allows us to do is, um, like, we can kind of see when things look off, but now we can use data to really identify possibilities and opportunities. So the example that I come back to a lot is one year in the playoffs, we were playing against the University of Ottawa. And then it was a 3-game series. And then we were going into game 3. And, looking back at the video and looking back at the exits and entry stats, we noticed that, Ottawa, I think they were doing about 10% better on their exits than in the regular season. And then, so my first question is like, why is it? And fortunately, because of the way that we were able to integrate the analytics tracking and also the video tracking inside of Stiva, which is the software that we use at the time, we're actually able to go back and look at a playlist of all of Ottawa's exits from games 1 and 2. And the trend that we noticed is that we had a problem with our line changes, in the sense that our girls were so much in a hurry to get a quick change in and get off the ice. We didn't have F1 stay and kind of force Ottawa to regroup. So what we did is F1, F2, F3 all sprinted back to the bench, and then Ottawa had a free exit. So they had about 5 or 6 situations per game where they just carried the puck out to the red line without being contested. And we fixed that for game 3, and we won it going away. And obviously we fixed other things, but that was one of the big, one of the big insights that we were able to unlock by looking at things at level 3. And having worked in Toronto for the past 3 years, I got a glimpse of what was possible kind of one level above that, which is you're combining the video coach skill set with the analytics coordinator skill set, but also integrating automated puck tracking or player tracking to really give you another layer of information. So, not only are we having manual tagging of, 500 or 700 events or whatever, but then we're supplementing that with automated player and puck tracking, so that we can get, let's say, pass completion percentage, the areas or the directions in which the puck is going. And this is, 5,000 or more events per game. It's, the sky's the limit, really. But like for me, it's extremely difficult to do human tracking of passes in hockey, just because it's so fast. If you tracked every pass in a game, you probably end up with a couple of thousand events, and you'd be so far behind that, as a video coach, it's not sustainable, and you can't do that way. But with an automated system like SportLogic, which we use in Toronto, you can have that. And the great thing is that it saves you so much time, because now, instead of saying, well, let me look at all of our shot attempts, or let me look at all of our zone entries, you can say, well, let me look at only William Nylander's shots, or only his exits, or only his entries. Or, if we're scouting against, let's say, Calgary, let me look at only Johnny Gaudreau's puck touches. really difficult and time consuming to do manually, but with an automated system like Sportlogic, really easy. It probably takes you 20 seconds. You pull up a playlist, it's all there for you. So the really, like, you know, the full potential, I think, of a pre-scout is attained here, because now you can really get to the heart of what the other team looks like, but also what their success rates are in a variety of different situations. So I think this is where, you know, I think in Toronto we did a good job of using this, but I still think that there are some things that I would have liked to incorporate uh, as a day-to-day process that maybe we underutilized in terms of the software's potential. But really, this is where the game's going. And, you know, if you work NHL, AHL, maybe NLA, you know, I think you're going to be able to work at this level very, very shortly. So this is really exciting. But at the same time, you do run into a problem, is that you know, now we're into 5,000 plus events per game. You pretty much have all the information that you could think that you would want, but now the problem becomes prioritizing the information, because, you know, your video meeting should not be longer. And the things that you tell your players, or the things that you show your players, or the things that you ask your players to do should not be more complex. So rather than, you know, taking this bulk of information and just passing it down to the next person in line, which is the player, what you really should do is boil it down and really do a good job of prioritizing things which are truly essential. And I think our left brain way of doing things isn't so good at that. And this is why I think, you know, the pre-scout process, especially as you work up to, you know, level 3 and 4 and beyond, um, I think it really is important to recruit the right brain and look at things from a more holistic or a more intuitive way. So, you know, I'm not about to get all like touchy feely with you guys, but I really do think this is important, because looking back, I don't think many coaches really made a point to teach me this. I just kind of figured it out on my own over time, but here's how I see things. So, you know, any kind of insight or understanding starts with asking the right questions. So for me, when you're pre-scouting a team, you're putting together a game plan to counter this team, there's one important question to ask, and that is, uh, if they were a superhero, what is the source of their powers? Okay. So, you know, I grew up watching a lot of cartoons, a lot of Japanese animes. Like I grew up with Dragon Ball Z. That was like my favorite show of all time. So I kind of outgrew the whole superhero thing. Like I've watched a few of the Marvel, you know, the Marvel comic universe series, but I haven't watched all of them. But, you know, every single Marvel superhero has some sort of a special power, but then their power is rooted in something, right? Um, it's like Captain America. Well, he was, you know, genetically engineered. Iron Man has like a nuclear heart, uh, you know, which is, it's a very kind of childish way of looking at it. But for me, it's important in this context, because every single team has a certain identity. And, you know, we do play the same sport, but the approach is different. And so there's the source of their power is a little bit different. Same thing with the villain, right? You know, early in every movie, the villain gets the better of the superheroes because they're able to identify the source of their powers and do something to neutralize that, and then they gain the upper hand for like 2/3 of the movie, whatever it is. You know, same thing with DC. Like, you know, Superman has kryptonite, right? Batman's superpower is that he's really rich, you know, but everybody has something, and every villain has something as well. And at the end, the superheroes turn the tables and identify the source of the villain's powers, do something to take it away, and then they win. That's generally how the plot works. So the question I ask when I pre-scout a team is, okay, well, every team has a breakout. Every team has a D-zone coverage. Every team has a regroup scheme. Every team has a forecheck. Every team has, you know, an O-zone sequence or their power play, their PK. Every team has one. But what is it that really powers their entire team, right? So one example is Columbus. Okay, so obviously, you know, Columbus in consecutive years take out Tampa in 2019. They take out Toronto in 2020. So what is the source of Columbus's power? Well, Columbus is a team that, for me, their most distinctive element is their 1-2-2 forecheck, right? if you're tied with them or if they're leading you, they're going to fall back into 1-2-2, force you wide, and then wait for you to make mistakes. So how do you take away that power? Well, first of all, you try to score first, because for them, it's not really useful to trap it down if they're already losing. But second is, you work on the individuals in that team and you make them lose belief in that system. Because if you're playing 1-2-2 and one guy's in the wrong place, all of a sudden the whole structure falls apart, which is true in every defensive structure, but more so for them because they don't really have a lot else to hang their hat on. So for me, it's like, if you're playing against them now, they're way less they're a way less effective team this year because for whatever reason, Werenski is off his game, Seth Jones is off his game. You can target Max Domi and he's going to start kind of freelancing and doing his own thing. So, same thing with Patrick Laine. So as a team, they're way less difficult to play against this year just because, the source of their power has been compromised. And all of a sudden it's like a deck of cards, the whole thing falls apart. And, I would be surprised if they're really much of a factor this year, but, I could be wrong. But for me, that's what I think about when I think of Columbus's source of power. Tampa's, what's the source of Tampa's power? Well, we can talk about, their possession play, their creativity, their high-end scoring. They have a good goaltender. They have good defensemen. But I think what they did a good job of recognizing last year was that all the offensive creativity and their play off the rush and their ozone play, it was vulnerable if they didn't get the right looks off the rush. If they weren't able to carry the puck inside the zone, they were easy to neutralize. So what they did was they went out and got a bunch of speedy, tenacious forecheckers. They went and got Barclay Goodrow. They went and got Blake Coleman. And really, it was those guys who were able to play both ways that put them over the top, because all of a sudden it's like, they've maintained the source of their powers, but now they've kind of filled out their weakness. And, you can play them in whichever way, and they're still going to be dangerous, and they're still going to be, hard to find solutions against. So, for me, the fact that they were able to start playing two ways really made them much more of a threat and allowed them to win the cup. Boston. So in 2019, I did a study on the Boston Bruins' top line before the playoffs started. And for me, the player that makes this unit go, it's actually Brad Marchand. And not just because of the emotional or the instigating aspect he brings to the game, but because on breakouts, he's actually that line's most important player. Like Pasternak's going to look to blow the zone early or to get a pass in open ice. Patrice Bergeron is really good to, staying low and support, but he's not as good a puck carrier as Marchand. So if you're able to kind of neutralize Marchand and pinch down on him and really take away his time and space, then all of a sudden Pastrnak and Bergeron become way less effective in transition, I think. And the other aspect that I thought was really important is once again, that right brain or that emotional aspect of the game is that, Marchand is at his best when he's instigating. So whether it means carrying the puck or it means licking you in the face. So what if you're able to put a player on him that's going to instigate and force him to retaliate? And that's really where I think, you're going to take him off his game, because, now he's taking retaliatory penalties. Now he's losing focus on the puck. Now he's chasing the play instead of making you chase him. And I think, if I'm game planning against that line again in the playoffs, I would really, emphasize that part is to beat the Boston Bruins. All you need to do is live rent free in Brad Marchand's head, and that's what PK Subban did way back when Montreal played them in 2014. Marchand's a left winger, PK's a right defenseman. I don't think that's a coincidence, because that's a duel that you see 10, 20, 30 times a game. So, from a left brain point of view, I think there's a lot more information than that. But from a right brain point of view, I think it's a really important thing to emphasize. And I think what it allows us to do is almost like build out kind of like a hero versus villain story where, you can be the hero. As a player, I think that's very appealing from a narrative, from an emotional point of view. And certainly, I was there in person when PK did his thing against Marchand in that series, and I would love to see that again. And finally, Toronto, a team that I know really well, uh, you have all these high-end offensive players, Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Morgan Riley. And the way to shut down offensive players is simply not let them get as many puck touches as they're used to. Because what happens is their timing goes out of whack. They start cheating for offense. So defensively, their positioning is going to be a little bit off. And then you exploit that. And then, the doubts start creeping in, and, they're not playing their game anymore. They're chasing. Maybe their coaches are asking them to simplify. It plays with their confidence. And over the course of 7 games, that's how you can beat them. So it remains to be seen whether, guys like, Joe Thornton or, Zach Hyman or Wayne Simmons or Zach Bogosian, they're able to kind of bring that second dimension that Tampa had last year, which is, we're able to play different ways. And, if our big players aren't going, we can be competitive and then wait for our opening, because all it takes is a couple of openings, and then, Matthews and Marner and Nylander make it a whole different game. So once again, the left brain part, we can say, well, we can look at their touches or their success rates or, their structure. But the right brain part is, as the coach of the Maple Leafs, how can you make these guys, play and behave and think like superheroes? Because ultimately, that's kind of what's going to take them to the next level. So that's it for me. Questions, comments, insults.
So now that you have that superhero, like, what are you telling Matthews before a game? I mean, he pretty much already knows he's a superhero, right? Like, you got to know you're a superhero when you're one of the best players in the world. Like, how do you even convey that to the player?
Well, I think it's best if you give him some simple kind of process oriented goals or KPIs, right? So for me, if I'm coaching Matthews and he's going out and playing against Winnipeg tonight, I tell him, look, you touch the puck 40 times tonight, we're gonna win. Okay, and if we don't win, it's because it's just because we're unlucky or the other goalie's throwing his head. But if you touch the puck 40 times, you're Superman. If you touch the puck 30 times, we're going to struggle. If you touch the puck 20 times, we're screwed. Right. So it's whether it's, being the right spots in the breakout, whether it's back checking hard, whether it's completing passes, whether it's, finding your teammates in space. Like, I don't care how you do it, just get 40 pucks.
And you use the left side brain to figure out why he's not getting 40 pucks or why he is getting 40 pucks.
Yeah, but then the right side is stripping away everything that's not essential, which is like
Right.
You can tell them, okay, you got to be here on the breakout, you got to be here on the back check, you got to do this, you got to do that. But no, it's like, look, the guy's a genius. Just tell him, get 40 pucks, figure it out, do it, and then that he's gonna find a way.
Right.
Well, how do you do with a team which is, I would say, B plus everywhere, who doesn't have a sense of power, a special sense of power? I was thinking about the team we will face next week. I was working on the press scout already, and I'm like, I don't know how to sell it to the players because they kind of good everywhere, but they're not superstars, and they don't. Let's say they're not so good at rushes. They're okay. They're not so good defensively. How do you do with those teams?
Sure. So there's a show called The Super Friends, and like I don't remember what the show is about, but the name is interesting because the teams that are as you described, they're not really good at anything, but who are still kind of tough to play against or who are still competitive. It's because they don't play you one on one. They bring in a second guy. The second guy is a super friend, right? So it's like you can tell your team, well, we're better at this, we're better at that. But if they 2-on-1 us, if they take 2 guys and play against one of our guys, we can't win because it's just one of you and 2 of them, right? So what you got to say is, well, look, if we're able to, be a better super friend than they are, right? If our support comes in faster, if our pressure comes in faster, if our second guy beats their second guy, we're in good shape. But if we let ourselves get beat, second to the puck, we call it second quick, right? Like if that second guy is not in there quick enough, then we're going to have problems. But if we play them 2-on-1, they're going to have no chance, right? We're going to be, once again, we're going to be Superman, and they're going to be, they're going to be nothing. But if they play against us 2-on-1, it's going to be, them finding kryptonite, and it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I see. Thanks.
I think
so sorry.
I just got a couple of comments. I think, when it comes to doing a pre-scout, the idea behind the pre-scout is to get some information that you're going to be able to pass on to your players, to your coaching staff, and to your players. That's going to help them to be prepared to play the game. So trends, obviously, you want to give them trends. I always looked at, what a team was doing in their defensive zone, and then what they were doing on the breakout, and then what they were doing in the offensive zone, and what they were doing on their forecheck. So those 4 phases kind of helped me to piece together some clips that might help the players prepare for the game. But I will say there is, you can fall into a trap here with a pre-scout in that you can go overboard. And Jack kind of alluded to that a little bit. You can go overboard with it. You can't let the other coach or the other team coach your team. You have to do what you do well. And so not only do you have to pick out what the other team does well, but you have to know what your team does well and how that meshes together. Because the problem that you can fall into is that if you do too much, then all you're doing is you're taking away what the players do well and do from an intuitive point of view. They have to be able to play. And if you give them too much information and, then it can really stifle them as far as I'm concerned. And which brings me to another point is that often the teams that are hard to prepare for are the unpredictable teams. So the example that you give, Leo, was, a team, they didn't do anything real well. So maybe they weren't real structured. In some ways, I mean, it's harder to prepare for that team. I remember a coach saying, well, we don't really know what we're doing. So if we don't know what we're doing, then they sure as heck aren't going to know what we're doing. That's a little overboard if you ask me. But it's that balance, and kind of left brain, right brain, the balance between the structure and play free, if you will. Anyway, those are my comments, Jack. Good job on the presentation.
Yeah, and just to your point, like I remember when I worked for you, our pregame meetings, the video scouting meeting was probably never longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think, throughout the years, we play against 4 teams in our conference, and every team had a very definite identity to them, right? University of Montreal, they were bigger and more skilled and stronger than us, but then their conditioning was a factor, and they couldn't play at our pace at a team level, so we exploited that. Concordia had a lot of very skilled players, but once again, they were less effective under pressure, and their team play wasn't at our level as well. Ottawa had a couple of extremely good players, but then as long as we're able to minimize our mistakes against them, the rest of the team was exploitable. And then Carleton, they generally had weaker teams, but if we let them get ahead early, they can really pack their own zone and use their goaltending to upset us. So I think every team had a story, and I think if we did a good job of conveying that story and then adding maybe a couple of more tactical nuances, then for me that made it really effective.
Yeah, and again, I'll repeat it. That to me, the cornerstone for a pre-scout is to help your team prepare, give them information. So it's not just about what you're interested in. It's what distinctly can you give to them to help them prepare for the upcoming game. I think that's huge. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. So it's like, if you say, well, they play a 1-2-2 O-zone forecheck, they play a 1-1-3 neutral zone forecheck, they play 5 tight in the D zone, but it's beside the point because, what is the source of their power once again? If you can answer that question, then I think you have it.
Yeah.
So we got 6 minutes left. Anybody else?
Maybe just, sorry, go ahead. Somebody else.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. I just had a question. When you talk about the right side of the brain, the idea of confidence and lacking confidence being a keystone factor in some players and teams, really, it interested me. So if you're able to identify that, hey, like a certain team like lives and dies on confidence, and that's their kryptonite, how do you face that head on? Because I think Peter mentioned not telling your players too much, and I think that would help with your players' confidence. But if you know that if you can take away another team's confidence, how do you that will win you the game? How do you go about that?
Well, it's like that in Star Wars, right? Like when they attack the Death Star, and they know that there's like a 3x3 exhaust port that if you aim a missile in there, then it blows up the whole Death Star, right? So, if you talk about a player on the other team, what's one player that if you can target that person, is going to cause him to break down or her to break down, and then consequently their entire team, right? Like we've all seen a game where maybe a certain player is struggling for confidence and then takes a bad penalty, and then they get scored on the PK, and then the whole thing falls apart. So if we can do a good job of identifying that player, and once again, for me, that player is Brad Marchand. Like, you want to attack that guy, right? You want to, like, he's the most important player, but also he's their most vulnerable player if you go at him straight on. If you try to avoid him, if you try to pretend he's not there, if you try to play around him, then maybe it can work, but most often it doesn't work. So and I think it almost like gives your players more confidence for you to tell them, hey, look, like, this guy is actually exploitable. Like, not only is this guy you know not only does this guy feed on your bad emotions, but he's also prone to that himself, right? And I think, it's David versus Goliath. Well, Goliath is bigger, stronger, whatever, but he has one eye, and if you throw a rock in that eye, well, he's done, right? So it's all about finding that weakness inside of their strength that really allows you to turn tables, not only tactically, but also emotionally. Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm kind of building on what Peter was talking about, the importance of making sure your players stay intuitive and you're letting them do what they do well. But I'm wondering, what's kind of based on either experiences you guys have had with this, but where's that threshold between, we're just showing you tendencies and things to expect in terms of structure, and then you get past the point where now they're throwing this at us and we need to change the way that we do things. Like, it's no more just trying to make you guys aware of what you're going to see. It's actually, we need to adjust the way that we're going to play in order to get past this or beat this club. Like, where is that threshold for you guys? And then how does that change in terms of the way you got to communicate that to players when it becomes less about being intuitive and more about, we actually need to make a deliberate change to the way that we're playing?
I think there's lots of good examples of that. For example, defensive zone or offensive zone face-off, and then defensive team is stretching on the inside winger. Our outside D's got to read that. So you might show them that clip. Normally, we might not, bring our D back, but show them that clip. This is what they're looking to do. Let's make sure we stay on the D side on that defensive zone face-off that's going to happen. So I think there's lots of examples that you can give them that create awareness. That's going to what could possibly happen in the game. The deal is that it might happen and it might not happen, but they're prepared for it if it does happen, and they're prepared for it if it doesn't happen as well. So it's not, don't get me wrong. It's not just show them some stuff and then away we go. It's show them this stuff so they're prepared for any eventuality. Hockey is a chaotic game, so they have to be prepared for that chaos, but there is some organization to the chaos that I think that you can help your team prepare for as well. So that's just one example. And I think there's a lot, lots of examples where you show them something kind of specific, particularly of a face-off. Those are big ones. I think you need to be real well prepared on your face-offs. I was doing a game for an NCAA coach, and I'm watching the first period. His D-zone face-offs were just like, I'm watching, I'm going, oh my God. They scored off one of them. The opponent scored off one of them. And I didn't think they were real well prepared for it.
So yeah, to Peter's point, I would also kind of set some guidelines in terms of, like, are we down by 2 at the second intermission, or are we down by 1 with 10 minutes left? Those are some critical kind of choke points where it's like, okay, well, if we get there, then we have a backup plan, or we have a contingency. I think it's important to establish those. I might cut off any second now, but that's what I would say for that as well.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, guys. Talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.